exposed to e-commerce as one of the original guys in open market. It became a $5.5 billion business in terms of market cap. So up a $20 million investment, so it wasn't bad in terms of funding and return. The last 4 gigs I've done, I've been a CEO role for the last 15 years on companies. My last company, by the way, I sold for $100 million about 2 years ago called Dexterous. The company I'm running now is a startup that blocks cell phone usage while you drive. So it's sort of an emotional issue of, saving teenage lives, saving your lives while you're driving because you're not texting or talking or driving. But it also has become a pretty significant, silly, it's become a pretty significant solution for enterprises. So if you're a fleet manager and you don't want to get sued as a company, you make sure all your employees have this technology because it's basically 33 states now have laws that say you're not supposed to do this. So that's kind of the background. I've known Joe for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now, a few years anyway, a few years. And we were actually introduced by another firm. So when it comes to funding, oh, by the way, in terms of funding, I've raised over $130 million worth of angel money, VC money. So I've done it a lot. I've done over a dozen tranches in terms of raising money, so I didn't just get lucky once. I've done it for 6 companies and a dozen tranches. So if you have any funding questions, don't hesitate. I've also, in my career, because I've been very lucky, several of the companies had pretty good hits. I've actually been an angel investor myself, so I'm a member of Common Angels. I have been for a few years. Also worked with Hub Angels in Boston, and have worked with actually Grand Banks Capital, which is a VC firm in Boston, in Wellesley actually, and also with Max Capital, which is a PE firm. So I've sort of sat on both sides as an investor and as an operational guy, but today my role is the operational guy, and Joe is one of my investors and a good friend. So more than anything else in terms of funding, oh, you know what else I'm going to do too? I don't know if it's interesting or not, I just raised, so this isn't just words or air. I mean, I really, being an enterprise guy, CEO, I just raised $2.5 million, literally about a month ago. So timing-wise, good time to talk to you in terms of what you have to go through. And the presentation that I used.
Some of it from me, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. Joe is one of my key guys.
And we're still in the same room together.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I did was I was just asked to speak at the ACA, so I was one of the presentations there on Monday, which is the National Association, for angel investors. And if you want afterwards, I won't do it now, but I took a few copies. You can take a look at them, and I have it also on a thumb drive if somebody wants it. Just take a look at it. But this document is worth $2.5 million, so it worked. So if you want to, if you're thinking about funding and raising money, take a look. It's an example of a real situation.
Thank you.
I'll just pass this.
Although, if I can interrupt for a second, you're already being too modest. No one ever sent out a document in the mail and got a check back.
I was going to ask that.
Ever. And in fact, I will tell you the story of the absolute opposite. I've never seen the plan. And even when my friend Dan would send me these PDFs, I wouldn't look at them. They're irrelevant. I'll tell you that.
So good point. So,
Daniel, if you want to show us anything on the internet or anything else, we have that available as well.
We can. It's up to you. If you guys look through it and you want to talk about any of the presentation and stuff, we can do that. I was just going to talk, and I have it on drive. I have my laptop with me too. So if you'd like to discuss any of it, but the generic, the thing you talk about, human relationships, is what you want to get into as opposed to the one-on-one stuff. So what I wanted to say is, you can tell from the interaction I've got with Joe, he's a good friend. He's a terrific guy, and is also running his own business, and we've had interaction where I've tried to help him with his business. Right. So there's been, including helping to find him funding. So it really, probably more than anything else that happens in terms of the human aspect of this, is the whole networking thing is the ultimate. And by the way, when I talk to folks, I lectured at MIT, and I lectured here before, and at Harvard, and Wharton, it's always about networking. It's about, it's that constant process for the next 30 years, guys, frankly, that you don't know exactly why you're having that network at the time, but you got to take the energy. Going over to ACA is important to make sure that you meet folks, get them to know you, and build that up over time. How I met Joe, by the way, on a very personal level, is there was a gentleman I worked with in digital equipment 15 years ago, right? 20 years ago, yeah. And he just happened to say, "God, you got to meet this guy, Joe." I had just raised some money, frankly, for a genomics company. I sat down with Joe, we were talking about some career stuff and some other things. And then sure enough, we became friends, and then ultimately, I hadn't seen you for a little while, and we had breakfast one day, and we met at the end of the breakfast. I'm not joking, you didn't see this presentation, Joe wrote me a check for 6 figures. So, not a bad thing. And it's not because Joe was
Needed the eggs.
isn't that right? A stinking rich, whatever guy that's dripping, but that the confidence in that relationship that had built up over time made a difference. And they intersect with other relationships that you look at, say, okay, that person's all right. So the two things I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to stop, in terms of what's worked for me, is always understanding what's the motivation of the person that you're asking money from. I don't care what negotiation you do, that's number 1, 2, and 3, is really try to figure out how that person's motivated, what their benefit structure is in their head, what's going to make them feel good about what's going on. In some cases, what I've found is for investors is that they want to feel like they can make a difference. So with angel investors in particular, you want to talk to folks that you think will have the ability to add some value, not just here's my money and I disappear. Other folks, it's as simple as the money I just raised for this genomics company before I came here, which by the way, within 13 months flipped for $100 million, a $4 million investment that flipped for $100 million, so it was a good deal for the investor. But the situation turned out to be that the person who ultimately invested, it took me 72 hours to raise that money, and the person who ultimately invested felt it was just a mentally stimulating thing to think about genomics. It was that they could, and they've now stayed involved to maybe do another project with that particular company. In this particular company, the initial investors were pretty heavy-hitting guys. The first investors in this company were people like, Tom Brady, the football guy, right? His father's one of the investors. And I've talked to Tom Brady's money guy, Peter Mattoon, about investing here also. And I guess he's putting his money into his house out in California that's 22,000 square feet. Who knows how many millions of dollars. But anyway, so that's one guy. Leo Hendry, who is the ex-CEO of AT&T Broadband, who also runs a $1 billion intermedia fund. Fay Vincent, who is the ex-commissioner of baseball, and is the vice chairman of Coca-Cola. A guy named Jeff Ubben, who's a billionaire on the West Coast, who's a financial services company, who frankly inherited $5.5 billion and has a nice little fund, a PE fund. Nice guy. But these are all guys that Senator Daschle, Senator Tom Daschle, used to run the Senate, right? Senator Kerry. So
The other Senator Kerry.
I'm sorry, Bob Kerry from Nebraska, and Joe, Bill McClellan's a real estate guy. So there's two different groups. There's sort of the group that's the very accomplished, very successful business person who are incredibly wealthy that still want to be relevant, frankly, and be asked questions and be involved. And so again, what's their motivation? Why do you want to get involved? It's a social good. I can save the world. We'll save teenagers. That's how this whole thing started before I got here. And then there are folks that came on a little bit later that said, okay, there's a nice social value here, but I also think there's a chance to make some serious money. And that's the second group of investors, which is when I came in, which is people like Joe. But again, it came down to Joe's conversation with Joe, 6 figures, more than 6 figures, was an hour conversation at a breakfast. Bill McClellan's another guy that invested in us, was an hour conversation at a breakfast. And that was partially based on my reputation and my track record. Made a lot of money for folks, and people kind of knew it. But the way these people found out about that was through their connections. So again, it gets back to the human interaction. It's that network. So because a guy named Don Perrin, who owns some retail stores around here, made some money, he introduced me to a guy named Bill McClellan, who's a real estate guy that he did another investment with. I went to breakfast, sat down with him, and an hour later he says, yep, guy seems to know what he's doing, fine, great, here's a check, 6 figures. So it really does happen that way. It sounds crazy, but it does. So the personal relationship and being clear about what you're trying to accomplish, being clear about what it is, the motivation of that individual that you're talking with, that personal motivation, not necessarily just the business motivation. And then frankly, the confidence that these people would have in you in terms of the likelihood of success based on your own capability, your ability to articulate the size of the market, your ability to articulate what the solution is like, the importance of the solution, technology, the defendability of it, but mostly your ability to show that you know how to execute as an executive or as a potential leader, so that it's worth my investing in you. You can build a good management team, confidence that the risk factor is minimized by giving you that money versus somebody else on the street with the same idea or related ideas. And that's, so I'm going to stop there. So so networking huge, making sure you understand the motivations of the people that you're working with, and then it's sort of connecting the dots in terms of who introduces you to whom in terms of money, and that they also are motivated by that. Now, once you have the money by that, I do want to say one thing else. So I'm sharing in front of Joe my secrets here of successfully getting the follow-on rounds, you know, after you got the initial money, because the initial money is, it's honeymoon and, oh, this is the best CEO we've ever invested in, and this is the hottest product, you know, we've ever had, and this is the greatest company that we've, you know, we've ever going to work with, and I'm so smart because I chose this company to invest in.
And there's a cliff 3 feet.
Yeah. You know, right. And then, of course, a lot of things that you thought you knew about the company and the guy and whatever aren't always quite what you thought it was going to be, unless you've done investments with that person before. But what I always find is very important is early on and often is doing two things. And that's to communicate about what's going on. People hate a vacuum. So that tell folks, you know, in any relationship, it's what it is. It's a relationship. It's not just give me the money and run. Is how do you nurture that relationship? You keep communicating on what's going on into the company, good, bad, and ugly too, not just the rah-rah stuff, because people start second guessing if all they're hearing is noise that's, you know, wonderful stuff. And the second aspect of it is that you've got to show momentum. You know, people, it's the sharp thing. If you're not moving forward, you're dead. You know, you sink. So what people want to see is that there's momentum, and it may be momentum around brand, it may be momentum around development of the product, it may be momentum around doing deals, it may be momentum about hiring talent. But the key is that you're constantly showing the audience that you have sold to in order to go back and raise more money is that their investment is meaning something, it's having momentum, and it's worth the follow on. So pretty much everybody, there's over a dozen angels in the company, I think, except for one guy in jail, so he doesn't have it. There's one other than that.
Less of an angel.
Yeah, less of an angel. He's not going to sell it. But other than that, and that's the other thing, man. You better know who it is you got coming in because it can wreck your company. I mean, it can really nail you. And I never met this particular person, but he ended up.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was before you.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
So never met him, don't know him, still don't know him, but not a good thing for PR. But at the end of the day, to get people to reinvest, which all of our guys have now done at least a couple of times, in some cases 3 times, is that reinforcement of communications around what the momentum is and what the issues are, what the momentum is. I also find people are willing to help. I'm really going to stop. People are willing to help, which is, I've got right now, Senator Daschle is reaching out to Steve Ballmer at Microsoft to get us into Microsoft at the right time. He's also reaching out to Larry Page. He's also reaching out to Tim Cook. So Tim Cook's now, instead of Jobs is sick, so he's running Apple. And Page came back, Larry came back, threw Schmidt out to go. Now, I personally knew Schmidt, and I've known him for 20 years, but now he's out. So, we've got a senator who's going to get us access now. We've got running Google, which for us is good because we're a mobile app. Obviously, that'd be a great connection. Bob Kerry, I was just talking to 2 days ago, Senator Kerry, who's a terrific guy. He talks like a truck driver, which is hilarious because he's a U.S. Senator, he's a U.S. Senator, he's a governor. He's one of the